Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive, and we're here on Runway 16-34 of the Westchester County Airport. I'm joined by our Deputy County Executive, Ken Jenkins, our Commissioner of Department of Public Works Transportation, Hugh Grecian, and our County Airport Manager, Peter Shearer, and we're here to celebrate the completion of a major capital project that we were able to do a lot sooner and a little bit less expensive than was originally planned. This project, where we're standing, Runway 16-34, officially reopens at the county airport for aircraft operations tomorrow morning, May 21st at 8 a.m. The original goal of the rehabilitation project was very straightforward. This runway, which is the main runway for the airport, needed to be repaved. In round numbers, it's about a 20-year period of time between repaving runways, and it came to a pass that this was the time for us to do this. The runway project, as you can see, is a little more complicated than doing a repaving of a street in your neighborhood. The principle is the same, but obviously there's a greater degree of weight in an airplane when it lands here, and because of the nature of air flight, there's always the potential that if we don't make this as safe a runway as possible, we could open the door to a tragedy. So in the repaving of the runway, what was done here was done with a great attention to detail, and in a few seconds we're going to hear from both Peter Shearer and Hugh Grecian, but I want to publicly thank them, all of the key individuals that were involved in the airport operations and our Department of Public Works, and all of the contractors that were involved in this, the men who worked on the project and women who worked on the project in order to do this. We knew that we were going to have a major drop in air travel as this coronavirus outbreak continued, and the ability to move the capital project up and get it completed in a directed period of time, because the airport was closed, has saved us some money, and it's also saved us having to work into the evenings and things that would have stretched this project out and have been more disruptive to the people who live in the area than getting it done in a three-week period and getting it done more precisely. The work had originally been scheduled to take place later this year in the fall, and the completion date was originally scheduled for October. So this may be one of those historic moments. There's actually a government construction project that actually finished sooner than was planned. You may live a long time before you see another one of those. Let's hope they have a different runway to land on, or take off from. By moving up to the construction for a few weeks, we took advantage to have as much as 6,000 tons of asphalt being placed in a single day. Now, that metric is a very large number and would have had to have been spaced out over multiple number of days otherwise. And once the airport is operative again, now there's no impact to the traveling public, whether it's through the commercial side of the airport or the general aviation side of the airport. The normalcy of this airport will take a time in coming. The airline industry has been deeply affected by the pandemic across the country, and I think for those who are worried about airport noise, they're getting a welcome respite that's already 2.5 months in duration and will have a little bit longer. But for the safety of the runway, getting the project done now is an unmitigated plus, and we're very happy that this was able to be done. And in every cloud, there's some silver lining. This would be one of the silver linings in having the project put behind us. So next, I'm going to ask our airport manager, Peter Shearer, to share a few thoughts about the project, and then we'll turn to Hugh Grecian, our Commissioner of the Department of Public Works. Peter.
Thank you, George. Just to add to what George said is that by doing it this way, we actually shaved off 3 months of construction that would have taken quite a bit of time, a lot of night work, and we really improved the quality of the work of this runway, which goes to say to all the users that we're giving you a good long-term runway for your use for the future business here at Westchester Airport. There was a lot of moving parts in doing this and moving up this schedule. A lot of people worked hard on this. We appreciate Baker Engineering, Tully Construction for working with us and moving this along and giving us a great runway. So again, I thank everybody that was involved, especially our stakeholders, our tenants that all contributed and supported this whole project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yep. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'd just like to echo the comments of the county executive. I'd like to thank the design team, Lyro Baker International. They were the design construction firm here. The construction firm, Tully, it was a $21 million project. 19 million came from the federal government, so 1 million came from the state DOT, and 1 million is put in capital bonding for the county, but that's all paid up by airport user fees, so there's no tax dollars spent on this project. That's $21 million that the county got. There's less cold joints, is what they refer to it as the industry. When you stop a project, we would have had to stop the paving over 100 times. Basically, we have 8 cold joints on this surface. They kept going, again, over 6,000 tons a day. To put that in perspective, what people would normally look at as an asphalt truck that comes up to a job, the 12-wheel truck that holds 20 tons. So we did 6,000 a day here. So again, the project itself, very few joints, done well before time, and a successful project, and the quality and the team out here, hardly any disruptions or anything at all. So we were, I'm proud of the project, and moving forward, we'll be good for another 20 plus years out here before we'll have to repave.
Thank you, you. I hope I'm good for another 20 plus years. There is any number of people for whom this effort would not have been possible with, and those of us who are involved in the general government really get far more credit than we should for the people that actually do the design work, do the actual physical work. Those people are the ones that have made this happen. But I will tell you, the role that Ken Jenkins played and Joan McDonald, they were the agents within the government that said this is an opportunity for us to get this done sooner. And we had a discussion, and both Ken and Joan had done the analysis on it, and as they presented the case to me, as usual, I'm a little slow to make sure I'm comfortable with things, but we were confident ultimately this was the right decision. But Ken and Joan, you both performed your role expertly in giving the right advice to get this done. I do want to emphasize this is a repaving of the runway. This is not a lengthening of the runway. This is not a strengthening of the runway. If you made this a stronger runway to allow for heavier equipment to come in, if you made this a longer runway to allow for heavy equipment to come in, those would be concerns about expansion of the airport. But when you repave what you have here to make it safe for those planes that already use it, that do land on it, then you're doing something that's a matter of safety, not a matter of expansion. And I know that there's always a lot of sensitivity to anything that happens here for some of the neighbors who see the concerns about expansion at hand. This is not that. This was an opportunity to do something. The Board of Legislators had a discussion about this last year when the county's portion of bonding was put into place, and so now in the implementation of that decision, we have reached the day at which this is finalized and open. I'll open it up to questions in just a second, but I want to use this opportunity to give what is normally my daily 2 o'clock update on the coronavirus. We have really just a few things to mention today. First of all, in terms of the numbers, Westchester County now has tracked 32,517 cases of coronavirus. That's year to date, and year basically began on March 1st. So we're sitting now at about 2 2/3 of a month of this incident, and the 32,000 cases that are positive are the totality over this length of time. But right now we have active 2,091 cases, and that's a reduction of 70 some odd cases from yesterday. What it means is that as many people as has tested positive for coronavirus, there are that large a number of people that have gone through the 2-week incubation period. And what is left are those that we consider active cases, people who have not yet gone through 2 weeks and in theory could still become sickened by the virus. We have in general seen that 80% of the people that test positive show no effects necessary for them to be hospitalized. Of that portion that gets hospitalized, there's a varying degree of health or lack of health, but we have had fatalities that roughly equal about 4% of all the people that have tested positive, which means 4 out of every 5 people don't get affected by the virus visibly, and then of that 1/5 that does get affected, 4 out of every of those 5 people leave the hospital healthy. We do have a fatality rate now now that has slightly exceeded 1,300 people, 1,305 to be specific. That fatality rate is 4% of the total number of people that have tested positive. We have tested 128,363 tests given out. There may be some duplicate tests in there where persons tested and then been retested. But in general terms, 128,000 people tested means 12.8% of our population has been tested, and that percentage is much higher than any other jurisdiction in the region, not just in New York State, but elsewhere in the region. The more people that get tested, the more that you know either have or do not have the virus, the better off we are in being able to try to manage the virus. And I use the word manage specifically because only a fool would say they can control the virus. We do not have a vaccine. We do not have an antiviral drug. When those things become on the open market and generally accepted by the scientific community, I am not a scientist. I am not qualified to determine this drug or that drug is the right drug, and I would challenge any of us who hold political office to make those kinds of assertions. I think when the scientific community tells us that this treatment is a vaccine that you can reliably take, this combination of treatments is an antiviral treatment that you can reliably take, and for most of us it'll have a positive effect, then we'll all breathe a sigh of relief. But until that day comes, we have limited tools to work with. Testing, isolation, go through the incubation period, try to reduce the amount of people that you would spread it to, and then out of that process we have the least possible infection and the least possible negative outcome. Because we have dropped in active cases, we've dropped in the number of people hospitalized, and our number of overnight deaths are lower now than they've been when you go back to the peak period. 7 weeks ago, we had nights where we lost 45 people. 40 people a night to this disease. So it's still a tragedy to lose 6 people or 7 or 3, but whatever it is, that amount of overnight fatalities are much, much lower, and that is a sign of the direction that we're traveling in here in Westchester County. With all of the infection we've had, that we're traveling in a good direction. I think that's very important. A few other points just to mention, and then we'll open it up to questions. We have a couple of members of the press who are here, and then if anybody is watching this and unable to give us a direct question, you're welcome to call Catherine Chaffee, and we'll be happy to talk with you and try to answer any questions you have. A couple of weeks ago, we began antibody testing through the Westchester Medical Center, providing the test and analyzing the test, and those taking of blood and the test processing was made available at Westchester County Center. You know that we turned over the county center to the State Health Department to use for medical purposes, and now the antibody testing is happening there. We started the antibody testing on May 4th, so we're sitting here 16 days after that, and we've been averaging a significant number of tests every day. When you add them up, it's well over 3,500 people that have been tested for antibodies, and we have now gone through the first responders, not just of the county government, but also of all the local municipal governments, the fire, police, EMS, in the county level, corrections, healthcare professionals, and at the municipal level, DPW employees. So it is now open to the general public. If an individual wishes to have an antibody test to find out if you have the antibodies that fight the COVID virus, you are now able to have that test applied, and we will have some information on the phone number you can use. Provide that phone number so that you can make a direct call and set up an appointment during the hours that the test can be administered. And we think that is a helpful step. It does not tell you whether you officially have had it or not, but if you do have the antibodies, then you're in a more advantaged position. But all of us have to be accustomed to wearing masks and keeping social distance to the best of our ability. I'm not going into a long detail today. We'll probably cover it before the end of the week. But in this county, most of the things are closed by the power of the governor. He has that executive authority. I have the authority as county executive to govern our parks, and I have been willing to open certain kinds of facilities because I think people do need to see some options rather than just being home every night stuck in the house, but reasonable options. So we've opened some things, we've closed other things, and we're trying to make those judgments. But in anything we do, we need social distancing, we need mask wearing, and we want to do it voluntarily. We're not looking to put peace officers out there telling people in an aggressive way, you better do this or we're going to arrest you. We don't want that. But we want people to understand that the wearing of masks, which is not part of our culture, this is something that's necessary for now if we want to stop the spread. And when I wear the mask, I'm protecting you against anything I have. So it's really a matter of respect for the other person when you wear the mask. And social distancing, there'll be a time, as the Byrds once sang in the Pete Seeger song, Turn, 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 there's a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. This is kind of the time to refrain from embracing until we get to the point where we have the virus in a position where it's better well managed. I do want to mention this is EMS week across the nation. We're trying to show respect to all of those emergency service workers. Some of them are professional, full-time, paid individuals. Some of them do it as a volunteer level. Every one of them, just like police and fire, put themselves in the middle of difficult situations. They see people in moments of cardiac arrest. They see them after a terrible accident. They provide immediate help on the spot of an accident or spot of an incident, and then they take the urgent transport to medical facilities after that. It's a very difficult job, and those people that do it as a profession are cut out for it. It's a calling, and we want to make sure we thank them. So I encourage everybody to do that. I'm going to be on a couple of Zoom calls tonight just to say thank you. Nothing elaborate, no great speech that the world will remember. Just a way to say thank you to people who have put themselves out there and deserve to have that respect. We'll also want to make a point of thanking our National Guard. The National Guard has been deployed in Westchester County. They came in very early in New Rochelle when a containment zone was created in the northern end of town. They provided exemplary work. These young men and women are giving voluntary service to the country, and there are certain benefits they get out of that service. They were deployed for 90 days. We've just heard that the federal administration is ordering an end to deployments 1 day short of when they would qualify for benefits. We think that's a bad policy. I don't need to embellish it. We think that if these folks have gone out there, put aside their workaday life to serve in the National Guard, now to go out and serve their people, what benefits they receive for that, they should honestly get those benefits. We think it's a mistake to cut it short arbitrarily by 1 day just to avoid those benefits, or educational benefits, or health care benefits that we think they deserve. We urge the federal administration to reconsider the position and reverse the position. We think that's the right thing to do. No vitriol, just the right thing to do would be to allow these brave men and women the opportunity to get the benefit that they properly deserve. With that, I'm going to stop talking, take whatever questions we have from Peter and Dick, and we'll go from there. Dick?
George, as you know, the pandemic has dealt a devastating blow to the airport's commercial airline users. And I'm wondering what the county can do to encourage outfits like Delta, which has abandoned the airport at least through October and maybe beyond, to eventually come back here. What can you do to encourage the use of the airport by the commercial airline industry?
Well, I think, Dick, Delta has indicated, not only Westchester, but there's a number of other airports, Stewart and so forth, that they've reduced their operations in. Sorry. And I'm sure Peter and his team are in dialogue directly with the different commercial airlines. My understanding is that other airlines are planning to come back sooner than Delta is, and the airport team here is going to be in contact with each of those different airlines to try to incentivize them to make sure they can come back and resume the commercial side, which is about 20% of the business out here, to get back to their regular situation. I think the reality is, and I think we understand this, is the airline industry has taken a terrific hit from this, and the perception of the opening of the society is at this point something that has to be done nationwide in order to see the return to travel, or the beginning of the return to travel that we had before. We have some states somewhat open and some states totally open, and a couple that are less than not, and that will affect the decisions that we make as business individuals or for leisure travel as to whether or not we get on the airplane. There will be, for all forms of mass transit, airplanes, commuter rail, Amtrak, buses, a point at which the individual consumer has to feel comfortable that they can get into a confined environment, that they feel that the environment can be properly sanitized and it can be spaced and seating, and they can properly feel protected from what might be the virus. And I think the transportation industry is going through that process right now, trying to figure out what do they have to do to create that. For an airplane, I presume it's a more difficult process than it would be for a train. You have to carry a certain amount of people on an airplane to make that particular flight profitable, and I don't know how you socially space and hit the magic number of revenue that you need in order to make the flight possible. I assume that's what the airlines are going through. I don't know, Peter, if you want to comment on any of this, I'm happy to turn the microphone over to you. But I think the basic answer to your question is we're in contact with the various commercial airlines. We're trying to understand what their strategies are. We're certainly trying to give them a sense that this market has a certain market demand. The market demand will come back here probably faster than in other places because the population that uses this in this area are pretty well educated individuals, and they're astute. And when the society opens up for travel, business travel and leisure travel, I think this is a market that will embrace it. And certainly the people that travel out of this airport have the option of going to LaGuardia, but this is a more preferential option for some of them. So once we reach a point at which people can feel that the contagion is into some level of management, I think you'll see some of that demand come back. Now, Peter, if you want to amplify that, since you know more about the industry than I do, feel free.
Just to add to what George said, make it real clear, the airlines do want to come back to Westchester Airport. They made that very clear. They want to come back, and they want to provide the service to the residents. This is a good market for them, and they know how important it is. Air travel is important to this community. Thanks.
Dick, do you want to follow up on that or any other questions?
No, there's not much to say. You said it. It's out of your hands.
Okay.
Just like you might want to do some tough thumping on behalf of the tourism office and the office of development.
Yep. Yeah, I do think you're going to see us, once we get a better sense of when we're going to open, given the governor's metrics, and how we're going to see some of our tourist sites reopen, I think we're going to be in a much better state. And we had a very aggressive plan that we were starting to implement for tourism. We had a new ad campaign, and it was well put together. It was done in concert with the hotels and the various other travel industries. We had to put it on hold, and I think once we see it happen, I think you'll see us take that effort. We'll certainly share that with you and all the other members of the press, so you know where we are with it. Peter.
What does having a resurfaced runway mean for all of the business users of this airport? Is that something you can use to help promote the airport, Westchester, nationwide for other businesses, that along with any other improvements you're planning? And Westchester has just been set to receive about $23 million, I think it is, in federal funds for the airport, another $30 million for Beeline. What does that, number one, do to your budget? How much will that help? And number two, what does that do for the transportation needs of Westchester residents?
Okay. Well, I'm going to let Peter and Hugh handle some of these things. Just to advance notice, Hugh, I'll let you talk about the Beeline bus system impact of the federal money that we've got, and then Peter, you can talk about the airport money. But just in general, the repaving of the runway in and of itself isn't necessarily a marketing tool. We would not do an ad campaign or a mailing to people saying, hey, we've done something that we needed to do in ongoing maintenance. I do think there is a narrative out there to some degree in which people view this airport as having a love-hate relationship with its home county, and that somehow we would let the airport deteriorate, because we know that it is, it is for many people a situation of unhappiness, that the noise that's generated and so forth here has created a certain amount of opposition. That probably exists at every airport, but here we have an airport that is in fairly close proximity to where residential properties are and the flight path that goes through some communities with quite a lot of people who have beautiful homes, beautiful estates, and are concerned about the noise factor. So to the extent that people might say, well, Westchester County isn't really committed to that airport. Look at how they've let their runway deteriorate. Well, we didn't do that. We made it a point of saying we have a certain obligation to maintain our facilities, and that's what we intend to do. And we need to find other ways to make sure there are basic improvements, to do those improvements in a way that doesn't represent expansion, but does represent keeping the system modern. And of course, when we talk about, as we just did, the commercial airlines, again, in round numbers, they're 20% of the business under normal situations. That's a big shift. The general aviation has become 80%. And the fixed-based operators that are here and the various other ways by which people use air services aside from a standard commercial situation has become a greater portion of the airport. And again, in those situations, people have options. They don't have to come here. You have other airports in the area that have certain advantages. So I'll let each of my two colleagues talk about the impact of the dollars, but I think what we're showing here is that we have a responsible view of how to handle the airport. We have to maintain the maintenance, and if you're going to land a multiple thousand-pound vehicle that's flying at a very fast speed on this much runway, you better be darn sure that the runway is up to maintenance, and that's what we've done today. We've given that assurance. So Peter and then Hugh.
Again, just to answer the question about the runway is the number one asset at any airport. It's the lifeblood of the airport. Without this runway and maintaining the runway and keeping it open and keeping it fit for use, we're not going to make any money. This county will not benefit from this airport being closed. Even when we do snow removal operations, the number one thing I tell all my crews is that if that airport isn't open or that runway's not open, we're not making money today. And again, the community relies on us to make money and keep the place open. That's how we fill our budgets. That's how we make money for the local communities. We got 1,900 employees here that depend on this runway. We support 6,550 jobs nationwide. Our economic impact is over $8 million to the local communities. So this runway pays for a lot of things that go on, and a lot of jobs are related on this runway. We must maintain it. We must keep it in tip-top shape at all times. Thanks.
Yes, on the bus system, through the CARES Act, the COVID monies are now being used to install shields for the bus drivers. We've ordered, when it first started up, all that money is going for supplies, masks that all the drivers use. They use sometimes 2 to 3 a day in their situation. So we've also used the money to advance any safety procedure on the bus, and we have every other seat now we're using. We have, right now the bus fares are free. We do have, the rear entry on the buses. They're a third full right now at best. So any of the losses that that come with COVID, we are charging back to where appropriate that money with the federal government, working with our county budget director every day, and there'll be continued expenses that we're going to have. So the new buses come in with the shields, but the old buses all have to be retrofitted. Again, safety first on all our buses to move the public around, get first responders to work. That's what we're working on now.
And Peter, let me highlight that with us here as part of our team is Susan Spear, who is right over there. She is a pretty incredible member of our team, and she's now one of our top operations people, but she began with us in the beginning of our tenure dealing with intergovernmental relations at the federal level, and I credit her with staying on top of many of these grant opportunities, and particularly working with Congresswoman Nita Lowey, Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney, Congressman Elliot Engel, and our United States Senators Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand to kind of highlight the importance of all of the transportation needs and the other needs that we have that we can benefit from the federal government. So Susan and as well as many other people here, and Peter has a very significant team of people that are here as well, that we benefit from their lobbying on our behalf and their work with our congressional delegation to make these monies come in. All of it helps us with the bottom line that we have to face. So if there are any other questions, I'm happy to handle them. If they're not, I'm now going to spend the next 30 minutes trying to put my hair in some kind of order. And as soon as I see my barber shop open, Rocco Briganti, I'm going to put a pitch in for him. I shouldn't do that. You'll see me looking more like a normal human being. We'll all get through this.
You want to take one as your membership in the control room on reopening? Where do we stand on that? Being we're one of the 3 regions that have not hit the metrics.
Well, I think, Peter, I think we're the closest of the three regions to the next being opened. We're very close in the Hudson Valley. We're going to have a meeting, a phone meeting. I'm not sure if it's already underway now or not quite, but where we're going to review the latest statistics. What the state does is, aggregate the statistics from the 7 counties. Westchester is a big part of it, 42% of the region, and I gave you some of the key numbers today. But we need to aggregate all of them to know where we stand. I think we're very close on most things. We are trying to put together the contact tracing program that the governor expects all regions to do, and I think that's important for us to aggressively put into place. The other the other statistics that matter here are things like declining hospitalizations, net new hospitalizations, and declining death rate. And I think we're in good shape. I'm not sure if by today we've cleared all of the metrics, but I think we will, and I suspect over the next week. I'm hopeful, and if we can do that and get to opening phase in the Hudson Valley, then I think we're the next step. Long Island is not too far behind us. New York City is obviously a different place. It's got a different level of density of population, a whole different situation, but we don't benefit in Westchester County if New York City is closed down and we're open. We have so many people in this county, 200,000 or so, that commute every day into the city. I did that myself for any number of years. And so I think we want to know that we can responsibly open the whole state, and so each region, comes in sequence. Hopefully, we're next up, and certainly if we know that that's going to happen sooner rather than later, we're going to let you know in the press. We'll put a note out to everybody so you're aware of it. Okay. So unless there's no other questions, I want to thank you all for being out here, and we'll keep you posted. Tomorrow we'll be on for a normal 2 o'clock update, and we'll have our Facebook Live program at 11 a.m. We have our COVID conversations, and we appreciate your time and energy, and we hope the time will come soon enough where we enjoy not just the airport but the rest of the society open for business. Thank you all very much. Have a good day.